We're getting there. We're being harmonized. The ecosystem is evolving, and it's very impressive to see the maturity of the discussion coming together on a European level, on a country level, on a planetary level, based on standardization and spectrum policy. But it's also very important to see the market view. So it's an excellent opportunity to listen now to Stefan Pentland, who is Group Policy Head at Vodafone for Spectrum, and he will give us his perspective on the services aspect, on the business aspect of the deployment of 5G solutions.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the warm welcome from the Greek regulator. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm responsible for making sure that Vodafone has the right licenses to operate the latest mobile services across 26 markets in the world, 13 within Europe and 13 in places like Africa and India and Asia. So spectrum, as you know, is essential to us being able to deliver these services. But let's wind back a bit. We've heard a lot about the technology and the industry. Let's go back to the most important aspect of this. It's the consumers. It's the marketplace, how customers love mobile data services. And the video that the regulator put together at the start of the conference, I think gave us an insight into the huge variety of ways people are now using mobile communications in terms of their lifestyle, social media communication, and so on. Not just among consumers, but we're beginning to see the same happen now with enterprise users. So there is a truly huge level of innovation happening because of the value of mobile digital services to society and to industry. We use the phrase gigabit society, and I would say that's really in two halves. Gigabit is what we do as an industry. It's our job to work out what gigabit is and how we deliver gigabit. But let's not forget the society. We have 350 million consumers across the European market who love mobile services, who rely on mobile services, and for whom they now become an essential part of the way they work and communicate and share and enjoy life. So this innovation needs to continue. I have no doubt that it will continue because, as you see, the industry who helps develop these applications and services, whether it's the over-the-top internet companies or whether it's retailers or entertainment companies, there is no limit on the innovation that can happen to allow consumers to make great use of these connectivity services. But the question now comes back to us as the industry. How do we deliver that gigabit to make the gigabit society? Society will use those new digital services. We're seeing growth rates of 30, 40, 50% every year in digital take-up and usage across all of our markets. As an industry, how do we do the gigabit part of the gigabit society? And more importantly, within Europe as a single market, how do we give all citizens, all industries, all enterprises, the same opportunity to use these services consistently across the Union? At the minute, we have a very fragmented approach to how we license spectrum and how we license mobile operators to build the building blocks to enable those services to happen. So you've heard about the innovation that's going on through the standards, through 3GPP, engineers working out how to get more throughput into our megahertz, more gigabits throughput. The chipset manufacturers who can integrate this smart technology into tiny devices that will fit into smartphone devices and into all manner of mechanical devices, the Internet of Things, machine-to-machine devices that we can install by the million into all manner of household or domestic or transport devices. How do we make sure this happens consistently across Europe? So I think when we see what's happening with the communications code, a renewal of the rules which define how mobile operators should operate, how licenses should be awarded, we see a single opportunity to move forward to help create that single market. As I say, we are very fragmented in the way today we have licenses offered across Europe. The obligations that come with the licenses, the costs that come with the licenses, how long can we have the licenses for? That means that when an international investor looks across the European member states, inevitably, some member states are more attractive to investment than others. Now, those countries which get great investment are going to enjoy the latest 5G services. My worry is that in those member states where legislation or regulation makes investment less attractive, they will be later to the party. And I think that's a problem, because I think 5G is something for every European citizen, regardless of which member state they live, and for enterprises who want to operate on a pan-European basis and have the same standards of connectivity across all of Europe. So we are at the final stages of trying to work out the final version of the communications code in Brussels with the politicians. It's essential that we take a step forward and make sure every member state has a positive approach to encourage this investment. I'll just give you one example, and I'm sure we'll come back to this in the panel discussion as well. How long do these licenses last? When mobile phone companies got their first licenses, the first digital licenses in the early 1990s, nobody knew really what was going to happen. The licenses were typically 15 years long. We've now spent the last 30 years investing in mobile networks, infrastructure, towers, connectivity, backhaul, antennas, etc., etc. Mobile isn't going to go away. Mobile only needs more and more investment every single year. But this is the problem. If licenses are 15 years, how can we get the right investment behind such a short license time frame? We've been picking up 5G licenses as the regulators offer them across Europe, from Germany 2 or 3 years ago and other markets as well. If you take that 15 years, the first 5 years is spent asking for the license, getting for the license, winning the license, waiting for the spectrum to be released. We waited 4 years in Spain, waiting for the technology to be available, getting permission to deploy, getting the capital investment to deploy the infrastructure. So those first 5 years are really just a waiting game, okay? Then there is 5 years when we can hopefully build the market, encourage customers to take up the new products and handsets and services. So there's 5 years when things begin to go quite well. Then we've got the final 5 years, and we're approaching the end of the license. It's very difficult for us to justify an investment case in upgrading the networks, in going from 4G to 4G+, carrier aggregation, etc., when we don't even know in 5 years or 4 years or 3 years if we would still have that frequency available in the future. Or if it was made available, could we afford the license fees being asked? So with a 15-year license, that first 5 years is pretty much a slow build-up. The middle 5 years is where we begin to build the market, and the last 5 years is where we're worrying about whether we can continue to run the business, and certainly we have no confidence to invest while the license expiry is so few years into the future. So in Europe, we are now discussing whether licenses should be a bit longer. Can we expand that return on investment window? Can we provide greater confidence for the billions of euros that need to go into infrastructure and software and services and handset subsidies, that investment has a slightly longer period of return? Now, national regulators have some concern about innovation. Will giving operators longer licenses still allow innovation, or will it create some kind of stalemate within the industry? Well, let's look at the industry we're seeing today. We do have a fairly stable industry structure, I would say, 3 or 4 players within each market. Is there innovation happening? Well, there is at every level, as we've seen. There's innovation at the creation of standards, at the development of chipsets, at the development of infrastructure and equipment, techniques to aggregate between new bands, and there's certainly innovation in devices and machine-to-machine and Internet of Things, and huge innovation in how consumers and enterprise are taking, adapting, applying, and reinventing these services. So I think we do have innovation at every layer in the industry. The challenge comes back to us and to regulators, I believe. Can we make sure we make the environment attractive in the long term? If we want the benefits of a gigabit society from 5G, are we prepared to support the investment risk to get the investment into that enabling infrastructure? Thank you.
Thank you.